Mike Bohn here, joined by the Bellator women's flyweight champion Liz Carmouche, getting ready for her first title defense at Bellator 289, rematching Juliana Velasquez. Liz, we're getting pretty close now. You're the champion going into the fight. How's this feel compared to the last time around, where you're kind of the one chasing for the belt instead of the one trying to hold on to it?
Yeah, it's exactly that. I feel, in my mind, I'm treating this like it's a brand new fight. Like I'm going out fighting for the title for the first time. So my mentality, my work ethic is just that, is striving to be as on my best performance as I possibly can. But it's not a 9-month fight camp. It's only a 3-month fight camp, so that's certainly a lot better on my body and a lot easier in general just to have a shorter, brief camp as opposed to that long, stretched out one.
Right. Well, it has been a while since the fight, though. In April, what did you do after winning the title? Did you kind of enjoy it and take a little bit of a celebration tour, or were you kind of right back to training pretty soon after?
I a little bit of both. So I was back in the gym at 6 a.m. on Saturday morning.
Wow.
My wife and I just did some cardio stuff. And then the same thing on Sunday, we were training. So I wasn't back into the gym and fight training. So I wasn't doing martial arts or anything like that, but just cardio, just light stuff, just to move around. And then we got to stay in Hawaii and actually enjoy and sightsee a little bit, kind of play the tourism role with the family. And then we headed back and I was right back into the gym when we got back.
So what was kind of the process in booking this rematch? Because I know it had been kind of something that was discussed immediately after because of the stoppage. I know you had said originally you would rather, fight a fresh opponent because you like facing new opponents. How long after the fight did they make it clear to you this was the direction they were going to go?
They made it pretty, I wouldn't say they made it very clear, right after the fight, but there was certainly a lot of evidence there that suggesting that this was the fight that was going to happen. I came out of the fight and I was asking Bellator pretty immediately to get back in there and to start getting as many title defenses as possible and to book a new opponent. I told them I was ready and I wanted to fight it back in there as soon as I possibly could. They said that it looked like it might be Juliana. They were talking about a rematch and they would let me know, and probably closer to the end of the year. And then as the end of the year started to get closer, I was like, all right, so that's definitely happening then. And then sure enough, that's exactly what's going on.
So is the timeline here, would you say this is more because of her? Were they waiting on her because it's in December now? Or was this always kind of the timeline, April, December, that you were going to fight again?
No, my timeline was hopeful to be back in there 2 months after I fought. Yeah. No, I let Bellator know when I signed with them, and the hopes, if they could fulfill it, was I wanted to fight 3 to 4 times a year. So at least once every quarter to have one in the books. So they certainly know with me, I'm always like, hey, give me another, somebody drops out, whatever happens, give me that call. I want to be at that fight. And now with the belt, you can't just last minute replace other people, right? That changes the dynamics, everything. Mm-hmm. But they certainly knew that where I stand with things, and I want to fight as often as possible. I'm not sure if maybe logistically with COVID, with anything that she had going on, maybe that's why they were waiting until December, if they had intent or anything. I just know that I had my request to try and get back in there as soon as possible, and they want to wait out a little bit longer, but I'm not sure what the dynamics were for that.
Yeah, and I guess it doesn't mean much now that we're so close to the fight, but how would you describe how the year's been? Were you frustrated, or do you understand the process? How would you kind of describe how you feel in terms of their ability to book you?
A little bit of frustration. I was just hoping that I would just have a little bit more say in my opportunities to be able to get back in there and to encourage the frequency of my fighting. But I also understand everybody on the roster is chopping at the bits to fight. Everybody's requesting, yeah. So it's got to be fair to everyone. And I totally understand that. I am grateful because prior to this, I was in the UFC and I was asking the UFC, hey, give me a fight. And I would get a fight once a year. And it wasn't for my lack of asking and my being ready. Bellator has been much better about, they told me signing with them, we can guarantee 2 fights a year. More than that, we'll try, but we have no guarantees. So they were pretty upfront with it, and they've stuck to that. So the fact that they've done that, I appreciate more than anything.
Absolutely. So tell me how you're feeling about this fight. I mean, we all know what happened to the first one, the stoppage, not your fault, but a lot made of it. You were just doing what you were doing. I'm sure, if you had more time, you would have just kept hitting her, right? But when push comes to shove, now that you've had a lot of time to reflect on it, you've seen the fallout, what do you make of what happened in the first fight?
I still stand by that. I feel like the right call was made. And looking back, that I've now seen different angles of the fight where I elbow her in the face. She doesn't bridge. She doesn't move her arms. She stares up at the sky and zones out. That to me is a fighter that's no longer in their body. You can be what's called flash knockout. So you can still have your eyes open and be concussed and have no recollection of the fight, have brain damage. So I think that the call he made, if you figure that happened with the second elbow and 10 more elbows followed after that, some people would say that that was a late stoppage, right? And if she was doing things to mitigate the risk, to advance the position, then certainly maybe that would have been an early stoppage, but none of that was happening. Second elbow, she checked out and stopped doing anything except just lay there and take all the abuse. Whether if she didn't like that abuse, then you move from it. Like you can't expect like the ref's going to stop it and I'll just wait out the clock and hope that I don't answer 30 elbows. Like that's not how that works. Like he did his job and he absolutely did the right thing.
Yeah, it's such a fine line, right? Especially for the referees. It's such a thankless job, right? They either stopped it too early or too late, but no one ever praises them for doing it accurately either.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, all that kind of post-fight narrative, I guess that's obviously what led to this rematch, right? Some people believing that maybe she didn't get enough rope there. Does that motivate you to go in and be like, hey, I want to make sure there's not even the slightest bit of controversy coming out of this fight and just beat her, in this fashion?
Exactly. Yeah. It's definitely a lot more motivation to make sure that there's not a doubt in her mind or anybody else's, and that she's put away in such a fashion that she doesn't need to open her mouth again.
Yeah. Is there like anything kind of personal, maybe more personal going into this fight than the last one? Just because that's supposed to be like your big moment, right? You win the championship, you do everything you do. And it seems like with the complaints, maybe it took something a little bit away from it.
Absolutely. You nailed it on the head. That's exactly it. It's personal. And what should have been this wonderful moment that I've been working towards for so many years, it kind of lost some of its luster because of the claims and because of her demeanor, her behavior, and how she carried herself after the fight.
Yeah. So, how do you kind of envision? I mean, you obviously did such a good job at what you did to be successful in that fight. Is the game plan as simple as go in there and duplicate it, or do you just have to expect that she's going to make adjustments that you have to adjust to as well?
Yeah, I would certainly think that she would see that not think that she performed a perfect game where it was just the ref making a bad call, but realize that she made mistakes too and come out there with improvements so that I can also showcase more of what I have learned and what I've been working on.
Yeah. And do you feel like, I mean, a lot of people say, I guess you're a champion, quote unquote, until you defend the title. Do you believe in this kind of saying, or do you already feel like, you're at the top of the mountain regardless?
I understand where people would say with that is, people believe that it was just a chance and that, anybody can have a chance. I've been doing this for a long time and it's definitely not chance that what happened. But I certainly want to be in this game with this belt, defending it successfully for years to come. So gotta keep fighting, keep winning to do that.
Yeah. What do you think of the rest of the division right now? I mean, who are you still keeping your eye on, kind of what everyone else is doing? And do you see anything that really intrigues you going into next year as far as potential title defenses?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited. I mean, Bellator has done such a great job of building the depth of the division. I'm hoping two things happen. I'm hoping one, that we have an opportunity to showcase more with the 125 because there's such talented women there. I'm also hoping that they'll add the 135 division so that we could have our first, for the females at least, 2 weight class title holders. I'd really love to go up a weight class and fight at 135. And I want a chance to fight in Japan. One of the things we talk about with Bellator is the relationship they have with Lisbon, but because of COVID and all the restrictions, we were unable to go to Japan. Now that that's open again, I'm really hoping to be able to fight in Japan and have another check mark in my bucket list.
Yeah, that'd be so cool. This event that they're doing at the end of the year is pretty awesome too, right? With the
I'm super excited for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and Scott Coker had hinted that they're gonna do this again next year, and it'll probably be more Bellator branded. So who knows? Maybe there'll be an interesting crossover fight for you in that organization as well.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and what do you think? I have to always ask kind of about Ilima-Lei McFarlane. She got back on track. She had said afterwards that I think she's only going to do one more fight and then retire. But I think she wants that to be like her, against you, do this big fight, maybe in Hawaii or something for the title. Is this something that interests you, kind of being the retirement opponent for your friend there?
I'm not big on the Make-A-Wish Foundation type of give somebody what they want. Ilima is my friend and I support her, but when it comes down to the division, who she fought wasn't necessarily the next up as eligibility to be fighting. Now, if she just won and beat the contender, will absolutely make sense. And I would love for that to happen. But it has to make sense for the whole division. We can't just give somebody a fight because they want it and they haven't earned the right to be up there again. And to me, she still has to work her way back up to the top after her loss of the belt, which I didn't necessarily agree with. She then took another big loss. It was unanticipated that nobody saw. So her win needs to be against another big name. It needs to go against somebody that's up there in the division so it can make sense for her to be the contender and to make this fight happen. And then I absolutely support it. Give her one with the next biggest person, and then it doesn't put any doubts and questions to the integrity of Bellator and how they designed the division and how they do the ranking system.
Yeah, I love that. That's really fair. Are you surprised to kind of see, like, obviously Ilima was undefeated. She had all these title defenses. People were, arguing, is she the best flyweight in the world, regardless of promotion, things like that. And then there's been all this time off, injuries, losses. Like, are you kind of surprised to see where she's at in her career right now? Now talking about retirement too.
Yes and no. Knowing her on a personal level, I'm not surprised about where her wanting to take advantage of her youth and have her family and build her life outside of fighting. So I understand, take advantage of that while you can. You're only getting older. But at the same token, like I see how she performs and how well she does, everything that she's done for the Bellator organization. So it does come as a surprise to me. And then of course the losses, I honestly didn't believe that she lost to Juliana in the first place. That to me was kind of a surprise. And then even a bigger surprise when her second loss happened. So yeah, of course I was just as surprised as everybody. I thought Ilima was going to go out of this game undefeated, and her only loss would be when I finally worked my way up to the title and fought her, and then she retired that way. Like that's how I imagined it and envisioned it. So it certainly is playing out differently than I anticipated.
Yeah, and just one other fighter I want to ask you about, obviously not in Bellator currently, but did you watch the fight between Valentina Shevchenko and Tyler Santos, and were you surprised?
I did not. I missed that
No,
one.
you didn't see that. Yeah, it was
No.
very, very close. So I'm just curious to know who you thought won there, but maybe you'll get to watch.
I heard. I've been meaning to watch it. I think after my fight, I'll actually sit down because I know my wife wants to do like watch parties and go through and watch all the fights, Bellator and UFC that we missed together. So that's on the list of ones to watch.
Yeah. Are you still like pretty tuned into the UFC product, or since you're gone there, do you kind of put that chapter behind a little bit and focus more on what Bellator is doing?
Yeah, my focus is definitely much more on Bellator. I follow that much closer. I do have, like many MMA fighters that get into this, we got into it because we're fans of MMA, right? So we still have fighters that we follow. So there are women that I follow, and men that I follow that I anticipate wanting to watch their fights. But I would say to the extent that I used to, and that in the sense of like studying the division, so I understood my growth through them and all my potential for working up through the rankings. No, I'm not looking at the UFC in that way. I'm definitely looking through Bellator in that way and following all the women and making sure that I know who's knocking at that door trying to fight for the belt.
Yeah, and you've been with Bellator a little more than 2 years now, so I think it's probably 4 fights, a fair time to ask you, how would you compare the experiences? You obviously did a lot in the UFC. We know your history there, but like, how would you compare it from like things like pay and treatment and all the stuff that's kind of behind the scenes that the fans don't experience when they're just watching you on television?
Yeah, I would say I was fortunate enough to have cornered Ilima to see backstage what Bellator was like. And I was actually trying to leave the UFC to go to Bellator before I got cut from them. Just we weren't able to make it happen, different reasons. Because I was like, wow, you guys were treated really nice around here. This is great. And then she would come to my fights. She's like, they're really making you do that? Is this really happening? This is all you get paid? Well, I'm like, all right, something's off here. And then the great thing was I fought in Strikeforce, and a lot of the staff that had been a part of Strikeforce went into the Bellator organization, and they were all the people that I really liked from Strikeforce. So I transferred over. It was like a reuniting with old friends that I knew. So the whole experience since day one being with Bellator has been wonderful, and it was definitely the change that I wanted and needed.
That's awesome. Well, you seem very happy and seem in such a good place. Really looking forward to this rematch. I did think it was the fight to do just so you can put any of this controversy to rest and stuff and get your real moment. And hopefully this time around, nothing will be taken away from it.
Thank you so much.